Unfortunately, Luke does not give us a lot of information about Ananias. We know he's a Christian. We know that. But we really don't know much more about him. But Luke, who, as I said, writes the book of Acts, tells us of this event where Ananias is asked by God to go, lay his hands on, and bless a young man by the name of Saul. Now, Ananias, as most Christians in that day, was aware of Saul. Saul was a bad dude. Saul was a persecutor of Christians who thought nothing about locking them up, and he had the authority to do so. There are some scholars who say that Saul did more than lock up Christians. In some cases, he had some Christians executed. Now, that's not found in the Bible, but certainly some scholars, given the testimony of historians writing at that time, seem to indicate that might have been the case. That Saul was just not arresting folk. At times he was having them executed. So when Ananias is told by God that he should go see Saul, you can imagine the concern that he had. I mean, God was asking Ananias to walk into the mouth of a lion. God was potentially sending Ananias to his death. And so Ananias shares his concerns with God. Who won't? God listens, and then he basically tells Ananias, go. Things are going to be okay, because Ananias is now one of us. Now, Ananias must have been a person of courage. And he must have had a really strong faith, because I'm sure he still continued to have some doubts in the back of his mind. But Ananias went. He found Saul on Straight Street in a home. Going into the home, he does what God asked him to do. Places his hands on Saul and blesses him. And we're told that Saul, who suffered from temporary blindness, remember his Damascus Road experience, which left him temporarily blind, Ananias is suddenly able to see again. But something more happens to Ananias in that blessing that he gets, or in that blessing that Ananias brings to Saul. He's not just healed of not being able to see, but Saul makes the decision to be baptized in the faith. Ananias' blessing upon Saul would forever dramatically change Saul's life. And I submit to you this morning that that's what can possibly happen when we intentionally, like Ananias, decide to bless someone else. Back in the 80s, Gary Smalley, who's a prolific Christian writer, and Gary Trent wrote a book, and the book was entitled The Blessing. And in this book, they studied the Jewish tradition of blessing people. And they discovered that in the Jewish tradition of blessing another individual, they found 4 things that always took place, 4 characteristics of that blessing event. They found that part of the blessing event included touching the person, meaningful touch, laying on the hands. They found that part of that blessing conveyed affirmation and brought words of value to the person being blessed. And finally, they found that the blessing also included the promise of a future. So those were the 4 elements of the Jewish blessing. Now, we're not really told exactly if all 4 of those things took place when Ananias went and blessed Saul, but certainly those elements are present in what God tells Ananias about Saul. I mean, God tells Ananias that Saul is going to be used as an instrument for Jews and Gentiles and outreach. He conveys to Ananias that Saul is a person of value to him, that he is now being affirmed by given the opportunity to be in ministry, and certainly there is the future that Ananias is to bring to Saul about being in ministry. So all four of those elements are there, and probably they did take place when Ananias blessed Saul. Now what I submit to you this morning is that just like Ananias, each and every one of us have opportunities where we can formally or informally bless another person. Every day. There's an opportunity for a husband to bless his wife. And every day there are opportunities for all of you moms to bless your children. And all of you grandmothers to bless your children. And you who are great-grandmothers to bless your great-grandchildren. There are opportunities for us to bless other people, to remind them that they're special, that they have value, to affirm who they are as a person. Now, whether or not you take those opportunities, it's always up to you. But when you intentionally take those opportunities to confer a blessing upon another, you never know what impact that might have upon them. One day, a 35-year-old man had a heart attack. Now, 35-year-old men are not supposed to have heart attacks, but it happens in today's world, and it happened to this man. And so he's in the hospital, and for a while it was really touch and go. And so the family was all called in, including the man's parents. Now, when the parents came, they pulled up chairs next to his bed, sat down in the chair. And the mother, she was a talker, she began talking to her son. The father was quiet. Had always been that way. Not only was he quiet, but he was the kind of guy who had trouble really expressing himself and how he felt. The father and son, because of that, were good with each other. They had no falling out, but they really were not close as father and son, because the son never really knew how his father felt about him. And so mom did most of the talking, and father just sat there. But then she went to the cafeteria to get some food for herself and her husband. And so the father was left alone, sitting with his son. For a while, it wasn't hardly anything said. Then the father did something totally out of character and unexpected. He reached out and he took his son's hand. His son was surprised, but he let his hand be held by his father. And for a while, they just held hands. And then they started talking, and they talked about everything under the sun, but how they really felt towards each other. But all during that time, the father never let go of his son's hand. And the son never tried to pull his hand away. Mom came back, saw what was going on, thought that was good, and so she just stayed out and let the two of them talk and hold hands. Well, then finally she came in, and they had their meal, and eventually they left, and the son would pull through. But for years, that son wondered about if his father really cared. But after that moment, being in the hospital and holding hands with his dad, he realized his dad cared. His dad loved him. His dad, through the holding of his hand, was communicating value and worth. And that's what a blessing can do. And sometimes you can communicate a blessing to another person just by touch. holding hands. Now you have to be careful in today's culture about touch. But there's a lot of ways that you can appropriately touch another person to communicate value in word. When I ride with our police officers, I try in some way to convey a blessing upon them every time. And many times it's through touch. Shake their hand before I leave. Put my hand on their shoulder as I'm talking to them before I leave, reminding them to use their head to stay safe. Sometimes it's just a pat on the butt. Touch, important. It's a way we can communicate a blessing. Every Sunday, at the end of this worship service, there's little mini blessings that go on in this congregation, and I notice it all the time. I notice some of you hugging each other, and some of you are holding hands with each other, and some of you are shaking hands, and there are hands on shoulders. Those are blessings, of one sort or another. You're not going to hug someone unless you care about them. Probably not going to put a hand on somebody's shoulder unless they have some meaning to you. So touch is one way we can bless another, but certainly in the Jewish tradition of blessing, there's more than just touch that could go on. There's actual words of affirmation and value, words that speak of the future, promise, and hope. And so look for opportunities to affirm those around you, those in your family, those in your apartment complex, those where you work. Employers can bless employees. Teachers can bring a word of blessing to students. Students can bring a word of blessing to teachers. Kids, always kids, can bring a word of blessing to our parents if they're still here in this world. Blessing. It is important to bless those around you while they are still here. There was a father who was extremely affirming to his daughter. And when his daughter was little, father would always go way out of his way to build her up, raise her up with affirming words and positive words and words that conveyed his love. And in fact, the father made up a song about his daughter, lifting up her attributes as a young girl. And he would sing that song. Sometimes they'd be in the car. And he'd just start singing this song. And he gave the song a title. It was called Darling Angel. His daughter was his darling angel. And so he'd sing this song. And whenever he sang this song, his little girl, she just would beam to hear these affirming words from her father. But then, little girls have a way of growing.
This goes to 20.
Hanging out of the house, getting married. Years and years went by. And now the father is in the hospital. And the situation is critical. And his little daughter, now a grown woman, is sitting on his bed. And they're talking. They're having a good conversation. And then the father said that he's feeling tired. And so just before he decided to close his eyes, he said, I want to sing that song to you, Angel Darling. So he sang the song, Little Angel Darling. Then he told his daughter that he was tired, so he closed his eyes and he went to sleep. 2 hours later, while he was asleep, he died. She would write these words about her dad singing that song. It was one of the most powerful, yet painful, yet healing events in my life. To hear my dad sing that old song. It was painful because I knew I would never hear my daddy sing that song again. Yet it was so powerful because in his final moments, he gave me life and love. He gave me a blessing. Oh, there was power in the words that we can say or sing, as this father did to his little child. So look for opportunities to convey a blessing to those around you. Look for opportunities through your words and through your touch to lift them up and affirm them and to share love. Ananias was given that opportunity. Go and see Saul. He had his doubts, but Ananias took a breath and went, and he blessed Saul. And that blessing changed Saul's life. Who knows? Maybe your blessing of another will change their life as well. Let's bow for a word of prayer.